You guys, let me show you how to cut this Princess Dart Bustier without the normal under bust or waistline cutout. Okay, let's get into it. So we are starting with the front part, and this is my fabric on a fold. Let me explain these lines to you guys. So you see that first line, that's our starting line, okay? Then the next line is my bust line. From the top to that point is 8 inches, which is our standard bust point. The other line is my nipple point at 9.5 inches. That is my under bust point at 14 inches, my waistline at 16 inches, and my hip line, okay? The top, from the top to the bottom, that's where the bottom line is. That is 43 inches. That's the length of the gown we want to cut, okay? So now from the middle, I mark 3 inches for my neck width, and I mark 2.5 inches for my neck depth, and I connected everything together, okay? So after doing this, the next thing I went ahead to do was to mark my shoulder at 8.5 inches, okay? After doing this, I went to my bust point. I also marked 8.5 inches so that everything will be accurate and approximate. Okay, I'm giving you guys rhymes today. Now, I came down by 1/2 inch for my shoulder slant. And after doing this, I connected this to my neckline. Okay. Now, the next thing I went ahead to do here was to mark my bust. So my bust divided by 4. That's what I marked there. You are going to mark your own bust. Now, for my shoulder point, I marked half of my shoulder point. I went in by 1/2 inch so that I can shape out my armhole. And guys, I drew my armhole, okay? Then I went to my hip line, and at my hip line, I marked 4.5 inches. My in-between is 4 inches plus 1/2 inch for sewing allowance, okay? So after doing this, I marked this at my hip line, my under bust line, and my nipple point. So I connected it to, you see that place we went down by half of the length, that's at my shoulder point. I connected it to that point, okay? So after doing this, the next thing I went ahead to do was to come down by 1 inch on the shoulder point, and at my waistline, I marked 1/2 inch on both sides. Also, at my under bust point, I marked 1/2 inch on both sides. Take note of this because there will be a difference from the back. At the waistline and under bust point, I marked 1/2 inch on both sides. So you can see that I kept the line straight. Then I connected it to my nipple point. So after connecting it to my nipple point, the next thing I went ahead to do was to, at the hip line, I marked 1 inch upwards, and I connected it to that point, okay? So after marking 1 inch upward and I connected everything together, this is what it looks like. Next thing I went ahead to do was to connect my armhole point. See that place we came down by 1 inch, I connected it back to my nipple point, okay? And this is what we have going on here. Very beautiful, very straightforward. Now I extended that line by 1 inch and I connected it back to my armhole so it will accommodate the extra we need to sew in the bustier, okay? So this is what we have going on here. Remember, at the under bust point and waist point, we kept the line straight at 1/2 inch on both sides, okay? So you see the distance between those 2 points. I'm going to add it back to my bust measurement. So I marked my under bust measurement. I took the distance between those 2 points and I added it back because you guys know we are going to cut it out. So we need the measurement to be accurate. I also took my waist measurement, the distance between those 2 points as well, which is 1 inch. I added it back. So after doing this, the next thing I went ahead to do was to connect my markings together, okay? So I connected my under bust point and waist point to my bust point. Now the next thing I went ahead to do is I took the distance I'm going to draw my flare, okay? To draw the flare, but I didn't want the flare to be too big, so I took the distance between those 2 points, okay? I marked it at the hem, and the next thing I went ahead to do was to mark same measurement again. So this will determine how wide my flare is. See, you really don't have to do this. It's just that I didn't want the flare to be too big. I just wanted it to look a certain way. You can just go ahead to connect it as much as you want, okay? But me, I just wanted to work with a specific measurement, okay? So after doing this, I connected it to my hem. Now at the side, that's at the hem, by the side, I came up by 1.5 inch and I just connected it to the other part of the dress, of the hem, so that we'll have this curvy flare effect. The next thing I went ahead to do was to add 2 inches sewing allowance to the sides, I added 2-inch sewing allowance to the sides, and this is what we have here, guys. Now the next thing I went ahead to do was also to add sewing allowance at my shoulder point. I added 1 cm sewing allowance to my shoulder point. So after doing this, the next thing I went ahead to do was to cut everything out. And yes, my baby came and it was disturbing me, and I put him on my back. Okay. So you guys, the next thing I went ahead to do was to cut out the bustier. You can see there was no need for me to cut the waist because we have like a tapered finishing around the hip side. Okay, so this is what we have here. This is what it looks like. Very simple, very straightforward. Now it's time for the lining. You can work with it like this, but I like to line my outfits, especially when I'm in the mood. And I was in the mood yesterday or today. When did I even do this tutorial? Anyway, so I didn't want the lining to be same length with the gown, so I just went ahead to reduce the length, okay, by 3 inches. And this was, so by the side I went up by 2.5 inches. At this other side I came up by 3 inches. I was just trying to reduce the length, okay. So I made sure my lining was on a fold, and I went ahead to align it properly with the gown, and I just went ahead to cut. Okay, like I said, I didn't want the lining to be the same length with the gown, so I shortened the length. Okay, now for the back part, this fabric already is on a fold, and I mark 1.5 inch zip allowance. Okay, so after marking 1.5 inch zip allowance, I went ahead to fold it in, and I secured with my office pin. Okay, so after securing with my office pin, the lines we had in front is same lines for the back. Okay, so from the middle I mark 3 inches for my neck width, and I mark 1 inch for my neck depth, because this is the back part, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, so I marked 3 inches for my neck width and 1 inch for my neck depth. After doing this, I connected the markings together. From the middle I marked my shoulder point. Okay, I marked my shoulder point, and after marking my shoulder point, I did the same thing at the bust line so that my line will be straight. You guys, I really don't know how to draw straight lines, so most times I like to take accurate measurement and use my ruler, because I don't want, when I'm done, my arm will be looking like banana. So after doing this, I came down by 1/2 inch, and I connected this to my neckline. I was verifying one more time. So after doing this, coming down by 1/2 inch, I connected it to my neckline. And we have a very beautiful shoulder slope going on there. So from the middle, I went ahead to mark my bust measurement. After marking my bust measurement, I marked the half measurement of my shoulder. See, from the top to the bottom divided by 2. I mark the middle there. I don't know, this is very difficult for me to explain to you guys. Anyway, after doing that, I came in by 1/2 inch, and I just drew my shoulder curve. My voice is cracking, I don't know why. Okay, so this is what we have here for my armhole. Now same thing we did for the front. From the hip line, I marked at the hip line I marked 4.5 inches, and I did this till I got to my nipple point. Okay, so after doing this, the next thing I went ahead to do was to draw a straight line. Now for the back, you must not necessarily extend this dart to the hip line. You can just extend it to 5 inches after the waistline. Okay, that's for the back, but for the front, you can also do the same thing for the front if you want. Depends on what you're working with. Okay, so after doing this, I just connected it to my armhole point, and this is what we have here. Now for the dart for the back, okay, at my under bust point, I marked 1/2 inch on both sides. You guys remember that for the front, I mark 1/2 inch at my under bust point and at my waistline, but here I'm just going to mark it at my under bust point. Okay, after doing this, I connected the markings to my nipple point. So this will give us a tapered effect for the back part. Okay, it's not giving us a bustier effect for the back part. So at my hip point, at my hip line, I came up by 1 inch, and I also connected my waistline to my hip line. Okay, and this is what we have going on here. You see that there's a slight, I was trying to shaping out the edgy part there. Okay, so at that point I extended the line by 1 inch to accommodate the sewing for the dart, and I connected this to my armhole point. So after doing this, I marked my under bust measurement. I also marked my waist measurement, then the distance between those 2 points. Okay, I added it back to my measurement. I also did the same thing for my under bust point. So you guys, you can see the difference between the front and the back. Okay, for the front and the back, if you watch very well, you'd have seen what I'm trying to explain to you guys now. Okay, so after doing this, the next thing I went ahead to do was to connect my underbust, my bust to my underbust and my waistline. Then same thing, I did the measurement I took at the hem at the front, I took same measurement at the back, and after doing this, I connected everything together. Okay, so this is what we have going on here, guys. Yeah, so this is what we have going on here, guys. And just like we did for the front, I came up by 1.5 inches and I connected it to the hem to give us this roundy flare effect for the side of the gown. And after doing this, I just went ahead to cut. Very simple, very straightforward. If you watched up to this point and you're enjoying this video, make sure you like, make sure you give it a thumbs up. So I went ahead to add 1 cm sewing allowance or joining allowance for my shoulder. Then I went ahead to cut it out. Okay, so you're going to take your time to cut it out so that you not go and cut out the main piece. You guys, why my voice is cracked is because I drank cold zobo with my child's biscuit that I stole from his carton. Anyways, so I cut out the dart for the back part, and this is what it looks like. Okay, so I also went ahead, same thing I did for the front, I also did same thing for the back when I was cutting the lining. So this is what it looks like. This is how to cut, not draft, your Princess Dart Bustier and Princess Darts without cutting out the waistline or the underbust line. You can definitely do that in your gown without the cutout. Okay, so this is the simplest way, the easiest way, and the fastest way to go about to cut this. Thank you for watching. Bye.